AI ethics and governance. And originally we intended this workshop to be about workshopping some means of making conversations about AI ethics and governance available to everybody and provide spaces for those discussions and include as many people as possible. And also we were thinking about workshopping ways that people could contribute time and other resources, for example, currency or crypto or GPU time. But one of the things that we found was that we were going back to the higher questions. So it sounds like from the group that some things need to be thought out a little bit more first before we can start working on the operational side of things. It was a really varied group, and I thought that we had a lot of different input that was extremely helpful both on the concrete level and on the abstract level. And so we had some talks that were very much about how one creates the spaces for inclusion and deliberation and what formal mechanisms there could be available for that to structure discussions. And we were talking also a little bit about how you weight the opinions of people and if that should be weighted at all. We also spoke a little bit about the ways in which AI will be applied to people and how ethics plays into that. So as we were speaking about on the panel, as I mentioned, AI affects everybody, right? So is there a way for people to opt out? One of our participants explained that in gaming systems, one of the things that creates trust is the capacity to opt out. So what is opting out of AI going to look like? Are there going to be people who would really like to just not be affected by AI at all? Is that even possible? Is it possible for somebody to be completely free of the direct or indirect effects of AI? And how could they separate themselves from that? And also, how could they opt back in if they want to? So, what sort of system could be designed within artificial intelligence in which social systems could be designed to structure society where people have the freedom to move in and out easily? And how could those systems be designed ethically? So that was some food for thought, which I thought was very interesting. Another one was diversity. So we speak a lot about diversity in technology, but and we all know about the ethical challenges that follow in the footsteps of that conversation. How can we include in ethics the cross-cultural influences? How do we respect different cultures? How do we include them when they seem sometimes to hold diametrically opposite values? So it seems to me that our work group raised far more questions, in fact, which is not that surprising when it comes to ethics, right? So, but it raised far more questions than we started with. But one of the key ideas that came out of it was that we should be able to create systems that hold space for expressions of difference. That should be able to, in the same way that our minds are able to hold two different ideas at once and able to have cognitive, I won't quite say cognitive dissonance, but are able to hold two contradictory opinions at the same time. Otherwise we would go mad, right? If we couldn't have that cognitive dissonance, we would go mad. So how could we incorporate that into a human ethics system and the ways that humans interact with artificial intelligence? John from World System Solutions mentioned that it could be seen as a human learning system. That if we were to create a system that gathers the discussions from everybody about how they think that AI should be governed and their ethical values and their value systems, then that could be a recursive and reciprocal process of human learning, which was a perspective that I hadn't thought about before. That even if we're trying to provide this means and a service of giving people voice, actually that could be in itself a way for humanity to evolve and to provide a better culture for AI and AGI to evolve in. And I think that's pretty much it. If there are any other participants participants who have any important points that I've missed, then please come forward. But that is what I remember.
Thank you very, very much. We seem to have a theme. AI alignment comes somewhere after a human uncovers its own alignment. Thank you. Robin, please.
Hi. We had a full table both times, and I don't think there was any overlap besides me in the two tables, so I guess it was a satisfying discussion that ended. Our topic was the economics of AGI and singularity, and we were assigned to have three probing questions to start people off, but we never really got much past the first one. I chose the first question to be the most common concern I've ever heard about automation, machines, and AI for 3 centuries, which is the concern that machines would displace people off their jobs. Now, in those discussions, many people were eager and made sure to mention that this isn't of all a certainty. So it's possible that, in fact, AGI will just be really nice to everybody and make sure they all get enough, regardless, or whoever controls them, regardless of whether people prepare for this problem situation. It's possible the transition will be so slow, people have plenty of time to adapt, or so predictable that they will know well ahead of time and be able to prepare. But, it was somewhat acknowledged that there is a risk, there is a possibility that, in fact, people would lose their jobs and it would happen unexpectedly and quickly. And in that case, we discussed what could we do about that. And one way to frame that is in terms of insurance, i.e. insuring against this risk. The obvious first thing that comes to many people's minds is government steps in and takes care of people. Whoever is in trouble and lost their job, government helps them. But then I pointed out to them that the AI economy need not be equally spread around the world and highly representative in every government jurisdiction. So planning to tax the AI rich to pay the new AI poor doesn't work if your jurisdiction doesn't include AI rich. So you might want more global reinsurance. The reinsurance industry tends to reinsure like local disasters like a hurricane with global reinsurance. If you could convince governments to do that, great. But another option, complementary, is to make sure that private insurance can be offered, and then that you could get firms, cities, governments to make sure that people have that insurance provided for them, just like we often make sure they have health insurance by requiring it, not necessarily the government providing it. Then the question is, how would you set up the insurance? Most insurance is set up with underwriting, i.e. estimating individual risk, which is expensive. But this risk is a shared risk among large parts of the world together. So all you really need is a financial asset that's split into a bet, the bet that the problem happens and the bet that it doesn't, or more specifically, the bet that it happens in any particular, say, 5-year period. And then people who are at risk for the event would buy an asset that pays out in that event. And then they would be insured to the degree they bought that asset, and then the other half of the bet would be bought by people who feel less at risk for this event and are eager to get the higher rate of return that they would get on the other side of the bet, because there'd be a risk premium because the people at risk would pay a premium, inducing the payoff on the other side. So now, it should also be noted that if the AI economy grows very rapidly, even very small amounts of initial capital will grow rapidly to be a lot, say doubling every month or something, in which case the risk is only for a small initial period, but still it's a real risk, and that's what we largely discussed is how. And so the point is this is the most common problem people have ever talked about. There is a straightforward solution. We're not doing it. Slap, slap. Hey world, we know the problem, we know how to fix it, do something.
Thank you very much, Robin. Actually, I just read an article yesterday. Pharma AI laying off 700 people after saying that its AI can do the work of 700 people. So I think the interesting thing I can find here is that people generally thought that truck drivers would be put out of work, factory workers, before artists and creatives, and here we are, the developers who created LLMs probably didn't realize that they were putting themselves out of their jobs by creating LLMs. So,
You can I have not created any LMs yet, but I will try to do it in the near future. Hey folks, good morning. I hope everyone survived after yesterday's party. Yeah, we too actually survived in a little bit. So our topic for workshop table, or working group, what's the name? Working group, round table, yeah. All the ontology of different definitions of this constitution of several people working together. So we had a topic of this decentralized infrastructure that supports AGI or BGI. So we started from very simple topics like let's say essential infrastructure for support development, which is probably kind of a data layer, a data exchange layer. So then we started to share different ideas about how we can evolve this next, and we came up that all BGI support infrastructure is based on the cycles, which by the way was proposed by Sharon, and Julie perfectly snitched the cycles into the cycles of the electricity balancing, because AGI and BGI doesn't have a body, so it doesn't depending on the cycles of circuit cycles that all our bodies depending for. And the next step we started to understand what is the cycle of the AGI that will require different support infrastructure, and we came up with several interesting, maybe crazy, funny ideas. We explored some, special type of fun, which we call difficult fun, from emerging and designing this infrastructure, and we set up three, I would say, three cycles. The first one we set from the data, which is a explicit knowledge representative used by the training models, developing AGI, and that goes from the slow changing dimension to the fast changing dimension that most of you probably know. That's the first cycle. And during this changing from the slow to fast, participants that use this as a network structure, they using a cooperation framework to increase the enormous volume of data that is essential for the AGI. The second is Sharon proposed the idea of very nice one. So we consider it as we as the gods, and we're using the planet, and we want to test the algorithm there. And this algorithm, we want to say what is the first control button will be if the algorithm will go wrong. Yeah, and that was talking a lot about that in recent couple of days. So we realized there is no stop button, as you probably heard on stage, so we confirmed that, right? And then we said, okay, what's could be in exchange? And we understood that probably the loyalty. So you want to try to test the loyalty. So the loyalty is a starting point for the cycle, because you want to be sure that the algorithm is loyal to you as a creator. And then we start challenging what could be the next step after the loyalty comes and evolve. So we realized what could be the opposite is the love, because the love will make us do some steps, crazy steps, or some things which will eventually break our loyalty to the creator. So when we realized that this balancing moves from the loyalty to love is the second cycle, and then finally we realized that there should be the loop between the feedback from human to BGI, as offered by Julie. And this loop is explained, I'd say, more advanced reinforcement learning engineering stuff, infrastructure, which allows maybe changing different roles, like parent, child, parent, and who teach who actually. That's a big question, maybe during the whole journey.
Yes.
And then Sharon and other guys proposed, like, once we pull all things together as a wonderful picture, Sharon said, we came up finally with a spiritual fusion machine. Yeah, and Julie proposed to write a paper about that, so that's what we'll start to do after my stage performance. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And Alice, did you want to present on your roundtable? Okay. And then I don't think Ben's here, but if anybody wants to present on the AGR, architecting AGI to support BGI, maybe Alex or Sergey were in that group. If anybody wants to come up after Anna Lois.
Okay. For the short version, there weren't enough people. So we'd really like your input again later today if you can join. But what came up was a lot of conversations around strategy. So how can we help the Constitution to move further, perhaps at the UN, or to be adopted by various governments networks as well. So there's a lot of conversation around that. Please join me around that because I think that's important. And also how we get more input, of course, from all of you. But I'd also like to share quickly, we had a really great roundtable. Ben is not here. It started with Ben's roundtable that I was at. David Hansen was there as well. I don't know if David's in the room now. And it's the question that came up there is, what are the imaginable capacities of AGI? And what do we need to understand about consciousness, the imaginal layers of consciousness from non-local quantum physics principles, so that we can actually enhance the creativity of AGI systems. And we also discussed, if we're talking about evolutionary learning systems or evolutionary learning patterns for the development of AGI systems, what are the qualities of those evolutionary learning intelligences that we can apply, not just focusing on human intelligence. And especially from that perspective, we worked on goal-orientedness. So in evolutionary systems, the goals of the systems very often emerge as a combination of affordances and attractors, which is very different from programming this into a system. So all of those conversations were incredibly rich, and we're looking forward to continuing that as well.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Any other thoughts from the AGI architect?